I always say when we cover something from Conservative Home, why we cover Conservative Home, because it is worth just honestly looking at Conservative Home as giving you almost the perfect snapshot of where the non-parliamentary party of the Conservative Party currently is. Um, I've said before, there is stuff that appears in Conservative Home that doesn't even appear in things that are like, the Telegraph or even the Daily Mail. Sometimes you can even tell that Conservative MPs have clearly written things like opinion pieces intended to go in like the Daily Mail or the Telegraph, and yet they haven't been picked up by the newspaper, but instead Conservative Home will gladly give them a feature on their website. Um, it is honestly very weird. But one of the people who we have honestly covered over the past, since we've really continued to look at Conservative Home over the years, is a guy called Will Atkinson. He's roughly around my age, and here is a guy who I have said on multiple times is honestly not only seems to be having like a midlife Brexit crisis, but a midlife conservative crisis. Um, we went over that time he actually met, real actual conservative voters, almost seemingly in the wild for the first time, and he didn't like what he saw, and um, he is honestly being very weird sometimes, writing all these things like going into despair in one moment to write about bizarre weird conservative fantasies in the next moment. And today is almost a perfect almost encapsulation really of his entire reason for being, I think, at the Conservative Home, that he is today pondering if the polls are indeed right, asking questions. Are these polls right? Should we really trust these polls? And I think trying to feed into, or at least give the non-parliamentary party at least a bit of hope that actually you should ignore these polls. But trust me, if these polls were in the other direction, Will Atkinson would absolutely be screaming for Rishi Sunak to go for a general election right now. So, and of course, as always, in the comments, all of the comments are incredibly negative, pointing out the fact, no, look, we've been in power for this long. We've just had continuing disaster after disaster after disaster. We have not left the country off in a better state than when we picked it up. Nothing has gone right for them. Policies have just been a complete disaster after disaster. There's almost nothing really good you could say um, happen in the past sort of 14 years. I'm sure people will say, oh, but what about this? I'm sure there are examples you can pick out, but overwhelmingly, there ain't much. There ain't much. So we're going to have a look at Will's article here, questioning, of course, if the polls are indeed correct. So before we go on into that, please do have a look down below in the doobly-doo, in the description box, where you can find, again, the Patreon link, the Buy Me Coffee link, where you can, buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and of course, the Pony Club as well that you can join to the YouTube subscription. And of course, you can always leave a comment, click the like, click the share button, click the subscribe button as well if you're new to the channel. It should have done its little whoop when you say subscribe. I love that it started doing that. But as always, thank you very much, everyone, for watching, and all the people that help support the channel. So let's crack on into Conservative Home, to Will's piece. And he starts off for some reason with Rudyard Kipling, and this is a really bizarre way to start this. So he starts off with this Rudyard Kipling poem, but I'm not going to bother with it because, okay. He says, as every schoolboy once knew, Rudyard Kipling composed Recessional in response to Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. I never knew that at all. Honestly, as being a schoolboy at the age of Will as well, we never once did any sort of poetry regarding Rudyard Kipling. We just never did. That seems to be very much a private school thing. Wouldn't surprise me if Will should probably end up on, of course, the private school mafia list of Graham's. Anyway, writing and publishing at least the 5 stanzas at the end of the celebrations, going against the general shift, going against the general spirit of imperial pomp and splendor, Kipling expressed the sadness the British Empire would one day join its predecessors in the dust. Never such innocence again. In the 2019 Conservative victory is a poor theme against the fragile grandeur of Lord Salisbury's Britain. To write a poem about it, it would have been a bit weird. But a Tory party pooper who produced the work of Kipling-esque gloom on December the 13th, 2019, would look pathetic. From Sunakism's dying days, Boris Johnson's triumph would look like a victory from which the Tories will never recover. That's quite an interesting admission to say that Boris Johnson's victory was so triumphant that the Tory party can never recover from it. Um, I actually agree with him on that. I mean, we never thought we would be here. I mean, there were lots of people saying um, that Boris Johnson is going to be not a too good prime minister, that he was very gaffe prone, that he was going to constantly foul up, but no one I think expected him to just go that bad. I think no one was expecting it to be that bad. I think people did expect him to be a bit more managed, that there would be a bit more, competent people around him. But Johnson chose his cabinet himself and deliberately chose people that would not outshine him. Compared to, again, when he was at the London mayoral office, where his team was not chosen for him, and it was his team that sort of stage managed Boris Johnson in many ways, which gave him that look when he was London mayor, that he was sort of the credible leader and maybe could actually lead the Conservative Party. But of course, we talked about that before. So Will continues. So the polls are only going in one direction. A YouGov's latest survey had the Conservatives at only 19%, a level only previous seen at the nadir of our very long weekend of Trussonomics. Less than half of the voters who gave Boris Johnson an 80-seat landslide would now back us, and Labour are now 25 points ahead at 44%, with Reform UK on a record 15%. Plugging these figures into electoral calculus would give the Conservatives over 40 MPs, minus 336, and Labour 519, a majority of 388. With just 50 MPs, the Liberal Democrats would become His Majesty's opposition as the Tories sink into third. And I've said this before, this would be a monumental shift in British politics, because not only would the Tories not only completely be wiped off the electoral map, they would be in third place. The Liberal Democrats would be the party of opposition, and this would create a parliament that could get a lot of progressive things done over the next 5 years. That would be the absolute dream. If that were to generally happen, as Will has described there, the progressive opportunities that lie before us just for that would be absolutely monumental. So it continues. So Suella Braverman, Oliver Dowden, Penny Mordaunt, all amongst the hundreds of all-handed their P45s. Now, with the last Tory MP, just please turn out the lights. Such a scenario seems unimaginable, but it only follows a general trend. The recent Ipsos survey had over Tories with 27 point Labour, more than double their lead in 1997. The Conservatives have not been with over 30% in over 5 months. This is on an unprecedented lag. Keir Starmer often leads by 20% or more. If these numbers are right, a wide wipeout looms. Yes, folks, things can only get worse. So, as you can see, lots of doom and gloom there. But I think for us, for Will, of course, it's going to be very doom and gloom. But for people like me, I think that offers a huge opportunity. And once again, it is well worth repeating that Owen Jones trying to spread this idea that, oh, you can go out and, I don't know, protest vote or, vote for another party undermines what we said there was that big opportunity to not only just remove like the Tories from opposition, but to put them in a position where they aren't even the main party of opposition. Because once again, that removes them from a lot of power as well. That removes that they can't dictate people who can go on panels and things like that. You might only see one conservative on like a panel that would have a massive impact, where it is instead made up of Labour and Liberal MPs. That would be a monumental impact on a whole range of things. And once again, this is the big picture that I think people like Owen Jones either deny, or for some reason they just do not want to see that or admit that that's the big opportunity that lies before us. So Will continues. The Daily Telegraph's mysterious NPR poll was designed to spook Tory MPs by showing Sunak's leading them into a 1997-style defeat, but it was far too kind. The shackling of on John Major's scale currently looks like an excellent result. The only result comparable is Labour's defeat in 1931. In the face of the national government, they lost 4 out of 5 seats, reducing them to only 52. That result was that one since labelled the most astonishing in the history of British party system. But don't worry, Sunak could still stop it. That is very wishful thinking, because once again, you've got to say, well, what exactly is Sunak going to do? Because he hasn't really brought forward any ideas to reverse the current system, or at least the disaster he is currently in. So, Will continues. The local elections will show the increasingly common anti-Tory tactical voting. Again, glad Will acknowledges that. And of course, those electoral calculus figures do not account for Labour, the Liberal Democrats, or Green voters holding their nose to back a candidate most likely to get the Conservatives out. Again, that is the next objective of this general election. Just completely and absolutely go to all the way. Tactical voting. You may have to vote Labour, Liberal Democrat, and again, if there is a seat where like the Greens can win and like they are win, and that win means no Tory, then yeah, vote Green. If that is the case in a tactical voting situation, I will fully endorse that. Even though, I've said before, I don't consider the Greens, well, they are a political party, but I don't take them, so to say, seriously. I think there are many reasons for that. Maybe I'll do another video about that, maybe another day, but we'll see. But yeah, I would endorse that. I would endorse a tactical voting if there is a seat that the Greens can very sort of clearly win, and the polls, show they can win. It means, the Tories doesn't win that seat, go for it. I would endorse that. Like I say, I've always been a big believer, especially in this upcoming election, for tactical voting. So we'll see. So where we? Yes, Will continues. So in this case, Labour in 1931 could turn into a very much Canada 1993, and we've talked about that Canada 93 before. And readers should be very familiar by now, squeezed on all sides, that Kim Campbell's Progressive Conservatives went from 169 seats to just 2, losing 26% of the vote, and of course dropping to just 5th place. Campbell lost her seat. No British Prime Minister has done so at an election. Could Sunak boldly go where Arthur Belforth couldn't quite? That would be hilarious to see if Rishi Sunak lost his seat. Oh boy, would that be a massive celebration if Rishi Sunak lost his seat. So readers may think that I have gone mad, not only because Tory voters are usually very weighted enrichment, but because the idea of a total conservative wipeout seems impossible. Aren't we the natural party of government, the world's oldest political party? Like us or loathe us, the Conservatives are supposed to be a fixture of our national furniture, a tacit cornerstone of our construction. And here's the thing: you've had 14 years of government, and that 14 years of government has just shown the complete disaster, the unwillingness, the sticking to ideology, even though everything and all common sense and reality says, hey, there are other ideas to do. They haven't done so. And yet, as he's about to say, hence why most Tories aren't yet panicking. And this is why the upcoming May general elections, not the general elections, the local elections, although maybe we'll get our general election in May, who knows? Um, those general elections, if there is like a clean sweep, if the Tories lose loads of councillors, loads of control of councils, if they completely lose all the local mayoralships, of course, I've said how important losing Ben Houchen would be to us. The scandal that would probably emerge from a Labour candidate unveiling just what's going on in the Teesside Freeports, opening the books for a proper investigation to take place. That would be very, very bad. You think you've seen corruption yet? Well, just wait until we get a full report into there. But he continues. So John Ellenridge has an excellent rundown of the reasons why: habits, history, herding and personal bias, institutional incentives, and an unwillingness to believe the exceptional is possible all costs us to refuse to accept the data in front of us. Surely Starmer can't really win a bigger majority than Tony Blair. The Tories won't come third. And yet, that blind faith could very well lead them into that, because it is the Tory HQ, it is the current Tory MPs who somehow have put on their blinkers and refused to acknowledge the reality of their situation. People like Will in the past have talked about how bad like the Westminster bubble is, but here he is preaching the view of the Westminster bubble when in the past he has said, oh, but they should go out and meet the people, mingle more. And yet, when he actually did that, he was actually kind of shocked with the people he actually met when he went to that conference, and would have rather have watched Eurovision instead. Anyway, so back to it. But what is different this time? Remember 2015? Beforehand, nobody believed that the SNP would win all but 3 of Scotland's seats, or that the Lib Dems would go from 57 to 8. No party has a right to exist. A total Tory defeat is easy to explain. Voters are now worse off than 5 years ago. Crumbling public services. The MPs are more interested in gossiping than governing. You've got it exactly right. And are the Tories going to fix any of that problem? Are they doing anything to acknowledge that? No. And I would give, I would, again, I don't think, it would ever sort of encourage someone to maybe vote for them. But I think if some MPs got together and say, actually, we've had all this disaster, we are bad, and I think actually came out and apologized for causing all this disaster, they might lose the whip, they might lose their seats. But I'll tell you what, I'd give them a lot of kudos for coming out and saying that. I think I would give them a lot of kudos for saying that. But there you go. Of course, the case against a Canada 93 result is that the Conservatives do lack a geographical concentrated opposition. Probably very true at the moment. Fear the Surrey sovereigntists, or a lack of a credible challenger to their right. I don't know, Reform UK is creeping up there, but there you go. Both together could very well spell doom for the Can UK counterparts over 3 decades ago. Unfortunately for CCHQ, Both have now arrived. The Lib Dems in the blue wall and Reform, even without Nigel Farage. At least I'm glad he's acknowledging that, because that's what I was about to bring up as well. The yellow peril has now returned to its historical norm. Tactical voting would mean that the Lib Dems have more than doubled their seats in 1997, despite losing votes. By-elections and local elections have now confirmed that their once future position by most respectable form of protest Tory votes. The long Swinson has now worn off. By contrast, Reform's rise is, of course, more recent and disastrous for CCHQ. Despite being led into an interchangeable quartet of golf club bores clinging to a platform utterly alien to most voters, the quote silent majority does not give two hoots about the WF or the vaccine harms inquiry. Again, I can't believe they're trying to push that and going into vaccine denialism. That is so weird for them to go into, but hey, you saw. I would heavily recommend it. Watching the Destiny Jordan Peterson debate, because I'll tell you what, in that they talk about COVID and vaccines, and oh boy, I will tell you this now. I generally think, especially in America, and I think it might increasingly try to be sort of imported by the right wing, that just the COVID time and everything has just completely destroyed the right on a number of factors, and it's just so contradictory, the statements that they make of saying stuff about that and then saying other things that are like, well, hold on, what about what you said about this? How come it doesn't apply to this? Honestly, go give it a watch. Well worth it. But anyway, back to this. So reforms, of course, touch of the Tory share margin of ever. A Farage return would, of course, then put them into second place. Had he put the Brexit Party into first place a month in 2019, pre-jungle. Again, Reform's success is unsurprising. British politics is becoming more European. We are here too of being unusual at lacking a populist right-wing party in either first or second place. Brexit and Brexity Huzzah were thought to have launched that boil and won a very disillusioned, older, working-class, non-urban, non-graduate voters for the Tories. Long live the Vote Leave coalition. And as we always said, that coalition, once either A, Brexit has gone away, or A, proven to be an absolute failure, and, well, guess what? Both have. That coalition just crumbles away like dust. And the more you show just how much Brexit doesn't work, that it was a really bad idea, very much, of course, built on that older generation, when we can see the younger people coming up and coming through increasingly pro-European, things are going to change very drastically, of course, for that coalition is long gone, long gone. But unsurprisingly, the sheer extent of our failures on immigration, again, your own fault, because you followed a very ideological path on that and refused to acknowledge any alternatives on that, is your own fault. Crime and, of course, the economy, again, your own fault on that as well, have seen these voters now abandon the Conservatives as swiftly as they hopped aboard. And 14 wasting years, as both Matt Goodwin and James Frey have now argued. The pitch is now rolled for an anti-establishment party with a platform for radical change, and right-wing voters need a British Donald Trump. I hope not, because God, a British Donald Trump doesn't even bear thinking about the damage someone like that could do to the UK. But there you go. And of course, they'll be even more desperate after 5 years of Labour. I don't think so. I don't think so. This is one of the things I've actually seen a lot of Conservatives crow about. That the idea of, we're really going to lose the next general election, but that's fine, because somehow after 5 years of a Labour Starmer government, we're somehow going to like come roaring back. And here's the thing, all the Labour Party has to do, regardless of whatever policies and things they may do, all they have to do is govern competently and govern well and deliver on, key promises. And honestly, it's going to really highlight just how bad you guys were. So, and then Keir Starmer versus Ed Davey will not make for an enlightening PMQs. I think it will. I think it'll make a very good PMQs, especially with the fact that progressive policies are going to be discussed. And here's the thing: given if the fact that if that happens, that they're not the main party of opposition, well, they only get to ask, um, two, is it one or two questions at PMQs? Then the Tories will not have a say in our British political system, in an opportunity to really bring forth a good age of progressive politics. That is truly fascinating to think about and a wonderful thing to hope for and imagine. But it is now very, very much within our grasp. So, continues. So, even with an extraordinary majority, Labour will be helmed by a dire inheritance and a recalcitrant backbenchers. Even before a Chinese attack on Taiwan or another potential COVID or Ukraine style geopolitical crisis crashes the world economy. Well, I'm glad you're acknowledging that we'll be inheriting a very dire situation. I'm already seeing that you're initially saying that you're gonna see, you know, a, a bad backbench, almost saying that, oh, haha, Labour's immediately going to turn into just how bad our party goes. Well, not necessarily. I think the fact that you are going to see a Labour Party that knows that it has to govern well, has to sort of do that. I don't think you're going to get that. And I also think you're going to see a lot very different take to if something happened like the geopolitical crisis compared to how the Tories would do it. I think we would see a lot more progressive unity band together about that. But there you go. So, as Stephen Bush has pointed out, for Labour to go into a single term for their worst defeat since 1935 to knocking on the front door of their largest ever victory is a sign of post-Brexit electoral volatility. What evidence do you have that Labour's going to go into a single term? They're not even in power yet. I think you've got to be able to judge a party by how it's going to perform when it's actually in power. Wait at least 2 or 3 years before you make that prediction there. Well, but there you go. If the Tories had even 150 MPs and a return to government with one or at least even two terms would not be impossible with a talented leadership, a coherent pitch, and a very disciplined party. Well, here's the thing. You've got to actually achieve that first, and you have not achieved that. That has been the consistent thing that we have seen over the past 14 years, that Cameron, desperate, running out of ideas himself, did a weird pitch in the 2015 leadership, got in, had a surprising win, and then didn't really know where to go from there. And since then has been the continuing story of the Conservative Party, not really sure where to go, what it actually wants to be, lurching very on from just short-term plan to another short-term plan to another short-term plan, and has caused a lot of damage. You've got to also think that what makes you think the voters are going to re-vote you back in? What if instead the party that rises, that if Labour do go to a one-term party, it's not the Lib Dems that would reap that that beneficial, probability. So once again, Will imagining, of course, that, oh, don't worry, we'll be back in within 5 years. Again, a lot of what you are seeing a lot of Tories say about these polls. But of course, a Labour in a 1931 scenario, such a return would be impossible. Open warfare would break out amongst the few remaining MPs, with left and right now blaming each other for the party's demise, amid calls to, quote, unite the right with a reform that may have won more votes but a few seats, and a split would look inevitable. Donors and media allies would then desert, and Paul Marshall would want his money back. Oh, and that is the thing. That is what is going to happen because we saw that in 1997. Like after 1997, the Tories just went off into political wilderness and were pretty much almost a non-entity until Cameron came in and sort of rechanged the pitch of the Conservative Party. But again, even that would not last. Um, if you defeat them, the bigger defeat, the more you wipe them off the board permanently, and the bigger splits will happen. The more arguments will call, you know, and once again, that is the gain here. Goto is about more than just getting rid of the Tories at the next general election. It is about wiping them off the map politically for at least a decade, if not more, for us to have a open field to go and play some really progressive policies in play. Because they will not be anywhere near and be able to even affect changes or even put amendments into bills to be able to block, stop, or stymie any progressive policies that a potential Labour government and a Lib Dem opposition might put forward. Again, that opportunity lies before us right now. Do not lose sight of that goal. So let's finish this off. So, under a 1993 outcome, all of this would be sped up. Every facet of the political life built on the assumption that there would always be a Tory party, a CCHQ, Tufton Street, and the wider right wing entertainment industry would enter a collective nervous breakdown. Dominic Cummings and Nigel Farage would cheer, but millions of Conservative members and voters would be utterly appalled. This is the worst case scenario. It is not the worst case scenario. It is the scenario we are currently looking at. It is the very scenario the polls are telling you is going to potentially happen. So he continues, having a personal and professional interest in the continuing existence of the Conservatives, I find this hard to write. I'm sure you did, Will, but as you said before at the start of this, Will has been going through very much a conservative midlife crisis and a Brexity midlife crisis. But there you go. So anyway, back to this. So I find this very difficult to write, but readers should be under no illusions that we Tories face an extinction level event. I turn from Kipling to String, saying, hey, mighty Brontosaurus, don't you have a lesson for us? You thought your rule would always last. There were no lessons. Were there no lessons in your past? And of course, every single comment under here talking about how bad they've done. Just saying this is what happened. Yeah, we sort of deserve this under this. So yeah, of course, bad time for the Conservatives out there. But however, as I keep on saying, a very, very good opportunity for us progressives in this. And I keep on stressing just how important what the opportunity that lies before us. And I want you to sort of take this away, like this message. If you take anything away from this video, take the fact that people like Will very, 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 very nervous at the moment, of course, about what's going to happen in the potential coming general elections, and even watching and under their desk, fingers like this, hoping at least there might be like one good thing, like maybe they manage to keep Ben Houchen in some way, but they lose all the other seats and just go, oh my god, we kept Ben Houchen, what a victory. Meanwhile, of course, they've lost scores of councils and councillors and the other mayoralships. But yeah, the opportunity for this and Goto is you do not just getting rid of the Tories from being the current government. You are getting rid of them from the main party of opposition to being completely wiped out. Like they're third. They're like the third party in parliament. There is another party as Her position. This opens up so many opportunities for us, and to really push for the next decade, if not more, for a ton of progressive policies. Just imagine what you could do. And think about this. In The Dark Knight Returns, there is a scene where the mayor asks Harvey Dent, why has he arrested all these people? And Harvey Dent lays it out like this. He says, yeah, um, sure, maybe the big guys, like, the big guys in the mafia, maybe they, um, you know, cut a deal, but the mid-level and the small-level guys can't. And he says to the mayor, what could you do with 6 months to a year's worth of clean streets in Gotham? And that is what I'm saying right now, that we have an opportunity. What could we do as progressives with 5, 10, 15 years of a conservative party that is absolutely completely fallen apart, that is in third place, has no real power, isn't even the party of opposition in the UK Parliament? Just imagine the possibility that we now have that lies before us here. And that's why I am so annoyed at people like Owen Jones when they try to undermine things like tactical voting, saying, oh, it's fine, go protest vote. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But again, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to the Patreon page, the one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee. We can buy me coffee. Leave a comment, click the subscribe button, click the share button on your way out, click the like button as well. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.